There we go. Can you hear me, folks? Awesome. So, welcome to another episode of the Career Talks podcast. I'm your host again, Orlando Haynes, and I think I'm gonna take out each and every week because I've missed a few weeks. But I bring you amazing guests, nonetheless. That's always been consistent to impact your career and life with amazing, actionable advice, and that's the goal when I bring these guests on. And so, but before we get started, I want to make sure that you're subscribing to the podcast, Apple, Spotify, and on YouTube. And this way I can continue to broaden the listener base and grab amazing guests all the time to bring you these amazing steps. So before we get started, you always know, I always mention how I've met these incredible people. And speaking with Michelle just backstage, she reminded me I had a mutual friend, Mac Pritchard, on, and so you all know Mac Pritchard. He runs the Mac List, and he has his own organization where he's just giving a wealth. He's one of the big players in this space of career development, and so appreciative of his work. But Michelle did what a lot of career coaches tell job seekers to do: make a comment. I noticed the comment, went to her profile, saw that she is currently in this space. It has been in this space for a while. And so she is a best-selling author, career coach, and the founder of Michelle Schafer Coaching, and the author of the book called Cultivating Career Growth, which is the topic for tonight. So let me bring on Miss Michelle Schafer. How are you?
I'm doing great, Orlando. So nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you. And thank you for, like I said, commenting. And this how we get on each other's radar. The simplest method to getting noticed is to comment on people's posts. So
it is the power of the network.
Folks. There you go. It works, folks. It works. And so, Michelle, we were having a great conversation early on, 10 minutes or so before we got on. But share with the folks more about who you are, your background, and your experience.
Excellent. I mean, it's interesting as a career coach. I mean, one of the things I love doing is talking to people and learning about their career stories. So it's, sometimes interesting being on the other side and sharing my own. But certainly what I do as a career coach is I help individuals navigate career transitions with confidence and with purpose. And, right now I'm working with a lot of job seekers. There's a lot of people looking for work right now, and a lot of people who are not really sure what they want to do next and not really sure how to get there. So I help them figure out what their career destination is. I help them put together a plan. I also work with individuals who are gainfully employed and maybe not feeling energized by their work anymore, falling out of love with their work and, wanting to do something else. And similar to job seekers, really not sure what to do or how to get there. And I got to this place through career transition myself. So I have been restructured twice. I have lost my job twice because of a company organization. And that's what led me to coaching, actually. It really was in response to a planted seed from a friend of mine years ago who is a coach. And she said, I never understood why you didn't do this as a career. And at the time, I was gainfully employed. I was loving my work, and I was in not-for-profit at that time when she mentioned this. And, when I was restructured from that job, that was restructure number 2. Restructure number 1 was after I was 18 years in a financial services organization. Wow. And it just, was kind of like the universe speaking to me. Maybe I should check out coaching. And so I did a heavy amount of networking, talking to a lot of coaches, and really made me realize that this is a calling of mine. This is something that I wanted to do. So I'll be celebrating my 10-year anniversary in July. Hard to believe, but never would look back now.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Sure. So let's talk about you hit it on the head right off the beginning, right? There are a lot of folks looking for work right now. Yeah. And this market is probably one of the markets, if not the most, how do I say, disruptive markets we've seen in a while. Yeah. Like the Great Depression is clear what happened there, and recessions and things like that. But this one is it's kind of confusing as well as to know what's coming next, how to pivot for companies who are doing layoffs and people who are looking, right? So when you're cultivating career growth and having those conversations with folks, what are some of the initial questions they're asking you in those conversations when it comes to their next step.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I find when individuals come to me, oftentimes they have been trying to navigate a job search independently and with a lot of frustration. So, oftentimes what happens when somebody finds out that their job has been eliminated and that they have been thrust into the job market, they start applying. They update their resume. They throw out a ton of resumes. I remember one of my potential clients I met with a few weeks ago, he had sent out 300 resumes in 1 week. And then people are frustrated because they're not getting callbacks. They don't feel like their job search is moving forward. So one of the big questions that I get from people certainly is, where am I looking in the right place, and what am I looking for? So, some individuals, if they are looking to do a complete pivot, maybe they are like me. I went from a financial services to not-for-profit with career transition number one, and they're wondering, what are my transferable skills? What are those skills that are applicable in other sectors, in other roles? So they're asking, what are my skills that are being sought after in other places? And then the part two to that is, well, what do I do then? Like, so where do I look? What do I need to do? What are those potential career paths that are really good fits for me? And so I find, out of the frustration that people have navigating their own job search, they are getting curious with themselves and they want to know how they can find their next job, how they can find work that energizes them for a company that believes what they believe in. And those are big, big questions, not ones that you can solve overnight, as you know.
No. So I have two follow-up questions. One,
Yeah.
you said, am I looking in the right place?
Yeah.
And so are those conversations more about career transition, like you said, to a completely different industry? Or is it they're just looking at the wrong companies?
It can be a mix of both, actually.
Hmm.
So, for my clients who are making like big pivots,
Hmm.
they aren't really sure where to go. Like, and for some of them, they haven't looked for work in a while. So, one of the big things that I will create awareness about with my clients is the fact that a job search and a career exploration is really nuanced. It has levels. So it's not just about finding jobs online and applying for them and making sure that you're looking at the right job boards. But it's also about, talking to recruiters, having some exploratory conversations with them, getting on their radar about the kinds of roles that they're offering. But then more importantly, and I would say the biggest part, I would even argue it's about 80% of any kind of exploration or job search is talking to people. And that's part of looking in the right place is, first of all, figuring out, okay, what are some possible paths that my transferable skills would be really good fits for? But then the second part is, how do I even know that any of those are the right fit for me? How do I
Hmm.
go and start exploring them? Where do I need to look? Who do I need to talk to? And what's the plan that I need to have? And, a big starting point, especially for figuring out where it is that you want to look, is looking to the keys of career fulfillment as a starting point, as a foundation. And I like to think of career fulfillment as having three defined pillars. Pillar number one is all about the work that gives you energy. You need to be seeking out your next step needs to be aligned to the work that energizes you and less about the work that drains you. The second pillar is all about the environment, which includes the organization. So, what kind of mandates do you want to get behind? What are the values of the right fit of organization for you? What kind of leaders does that right organization employ, and team members as well? But then the third pillar, and this one's really important as well, is taking stock of your non-negotiables. Like, what are the things that are so deeply important to you that you would be willing to walk away from an opportunity if they weren't there? And when you've done some reflection to figure out what your career fulfillment, how that's defined, what those elements look like for you, it can really shape where it is that you start heading and exploring new paths.
Okay. Got a bunch of questions for you.
All right.
We're about to dive deep, folks.
Love
So
it.
the folks that are listening, go ahead and throw in your questions. We can field those off to Michelle as well. So
Mhm.
the company alignment thing, I wonder if, and this is just popped in my head when you said it earlier, the companies that the folks wish they can align with because they like their mission, their value. Are they hiring? Like, do we know if they're hiring? What's that breadth of, bucket list that they say, if these are the top 5 companies, but only one are hiring or 2 are hiring, right? That gets so narrow for them. And so do they pivot from that? Do folks have to now start to consider like, hey, especially the ones that are looking right now, not the ones that are still in a current role, but the ones that
Yeah.
are looking, it's like, at what point have you seen maybe in conversations with their clients that were like, I want to stay in accounting because it's my passion and I love it, but
Yeah.
where and what industry and what company size no longer matters. I just need to get back to work.
Yeah. Yeah, and when I talk about those 3 keys of career fulfillment for those job seekers that are listening right now, that maybe you've just recently been laid off, you have lots of bills to pay, you've got a family to support, you need to dive in, and you need to dive in really quickly. Doing that front end reflection, there may not be a lot of time to be able to do that. You might just need to spring into action. So, to your question, Orlando, and the organizations, the interesting thing is that, like, let's say for somebody who, yeah, they want to stay in accounting, but maybe they're not seeing a lot online, or they're applying to jobs and they're not really getting a lot of response. The thing is that not all the available jobs are posted. And so those companies that you're aligned with in terms of the mandate, the values, the size, all of those things, the criteria that's important to you, it's very, very possible that those companies are hiring. You're just not seeing it publicly, which means that, kind of back to that 80% of a job search needs to be reaching out, needs to be exploring and having conversations. Is the more that you are reaching out and having conversations with those companies of interest, we'll call those, informational interviews or one-on-ones, or we can throw out, yeah, the big word of networking, which usually, I've have clients that then they go blank, because they think, I can't do that. I don't even know how to do that. But that is the one thing that will help you uncover those possibilities.
Mm.
And, when you've been doing a lot of that core work, you've been looking online, you've been talking to recruiters, you have been, networking and exploring, and there doesn't seem to be a lot in what you are looking for, then absolutely, Orlando, there does come a moment where, somebody will need to kind of reflect for themselves and think, okay, what is the timeline I'm giving myself? Like, do I want to keep doing this for, 2 weeks, a month, 2 months? And also looking at your own job search strategy. Are you maxing out all of the different activities, both online and recruiters and networking, in order to find those positions? If the answer is yes, you're maxing out all the activities and still not really turning up a lot,
Mhm.
then doing some searching and some research and talking to people about alternatives is going to be a good next step to make sure that you can pivot into something new and find something within the time frame that you need.
And I hear a lot of folks that are sharing other, coaches and thought leaders that are in our space. You're here to say that it's not the job seeker's fault; it's the industry or possibly the company. I mean, there's all kinds of ways you can go. So I don't know what the silver bullet is, right? So, and
Yeah.
I think a lot of folks will come to individuals like us and be, what's the one thing, what's wave your magic wand, Michelle, rub the crystal, or who do you pray to help help your clients. And I think it's just an unpredictable market right now,
Yeah,
that
it's a
it's
tough one.
causing job seekers to 10x their efforts in the job search. But I do
Yeah.
have additional questions, but we do have a question from one of
Oh.
our watchers. So it says, Wafa says, how important do you think positioning is in the job search process? For example, should a job seeker position themselves for one specific job title, like marketing specialist, and tailor all the applications materials accordingly? Or Is it better to target multiple similar job titles such as marketing coordinator, content strategist, social media manager that share overlapping skills, responsibilities, additional? Do you think this is okay to apply for different roles?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's a question that I've been asked by my own clients. In fact, sometimes they don't even ask me. I just see that that's the approach when I first meet with them. One of the first things that I ask them for, of course, is their resume, and especially like aligned to a specific job. And I can see that there are, sometimes an application is trying to achieve too much. So one that is too broad, even though the skills are applicable to a number of different roles, if it doesn't appear in the application that you're targeting that job, it is almost a sure result that that application is not going to make it through the screening. So one of the things that I do recommend to clients is be as specific as you can with, I'm going to call it your career target, or we could call it the career destination. Like thinking like you're going on vacation, you need to have a destination, you need to have a plan. Of course, looking for work is not nearly as much fun as going on vacation, but the destination part is quite the same. So when you're applying for a job, what I like to recommend to clients is you want to be passing the checkmark test. And what the checkmark test is taking the job posting and making sure in your resume that every single one of the qualifications and the responsibilities specifically, that there is evidence and proof in your resume that you have done those very things. And when you can showcase an application that is passing that test, it is targeted for that job, and your cover letter to match, that you are indicating in your cover letter, not just a generic summary of all the different things that you've done, but you've been clear about what's motivated you to apply for that job as opposed to any job. What is motivating you to want to work for that company as opposed to any company? And what are some very specific ways that you're meeting the qualifications of that job as opposed to any job? That is a targeted application, and targeted applications will perform much better in the screening process. And one way to get your application to close to the top of the list, or at least at the very minimum in a much smaller pile, is when you take that targeted application and you search within your network, who in my network works for the company that I'm applying for, or knows somebody who works at the company that I'm applying for. Now I'm talking about secondary connections and LinkedIn terms, but it's reaching out to your network to get the referral. And I'm going to tell a little story because this happened literally just today. So I was working with a client today. He has an interview actually tomorrow. And he applied for a job. It was a large national organization. He found the job online. He applied online. He got a message saying that he was not going to be screened into the process. End of the road for him. Well, at the same time he applied, he went to his network and he found somebody that he knew that works on the inside. And so he got his friend to, make a referral and connect him to the hiring manager. Guess what? That's why he has an interview. So he went from a no to a yes, we're going to give you an interview. And why? Because he used his network to get his application in the right hands. And he had a targeted application. He had an application that really lined up to the job. So, long answer to say, target your applications, pass that checkmark test, really line it up. Make sure that you're showing the hiring manager that you want this and why they should take a look at you seriously.
Love that. And in your story, excuse me, there's so much to unpack. Like, why didn't a recruiter recognize it? And so, right, we can go down a rabbit hole. But I'm gonna add two more cents to on top of and piggyback off your response. What I share with folks sometimes too is because you peppered in a few titles there, Wafa, and so. I always try to share folks, look at the job function, because the titles can be completely different from company to company, industry to industry. And so to your point and what Michelle said, if the functions of the role with the job duties match your skill and you're able to mirror, produce a mirror image resume, you're more likely to have success. And I would say almost throwing the title, not saying out of the window. But if it's aligning, the title may be it's going to fall within the umbrella of marketing. At some point, it's going to match. But the goal is not, recruiters don't look at, does your title match the title we're looking for? It's, does your skills match the functions and the roles, the expectations we're looking for? And so focus on that. That's where the meat is for those applications. And so the other part of what you said, sorry, my kids are coming in the background. Is a little two-year-old I told you about. She's home. You said work that energizes you.
Yes.
And so how do you coach folks to say, okay, you need to take not like a Myers-Briggs assessment, but assess what you're currently doing. You've been doing it for 3 years, 4 years, 8 years, whatever the case may be. It could be 6 months to a year, whatever.
Yeah.
How do you start separating the stuff that energizes you from the stuff that depletes from you, and reframing your search around that?
Yeah, I mean, it requires a lot of reflection. I mean, it's not something that oftentimes just comes very quickly to individuals that I'm speaking with. But when I ask them, and I'll say, think across your career. I said, like, don't even think about, the job that you're leaving or the job that you've just left. Think across your career. Think even in terms of volunteer work, like things that you have done over the course, like professionally, that you've been able to do and achieve. And when I ask them, like, think about one time where you remember really loving the work that you were doing. What were you doing? And why did it fire you up? And so, sometimes what I start to get are really high level responses. Well, I really love helping people. Okay, so now it's splitting the onion, kind of peeling that onion. So tell me a little bit more. Well, what were you doing when you were helping people? And then they might say, oh, like I was working for this community agency, and I loved like making connections. Okay, well, what kind of connections did you make? Like, what kind of conversations did you have? Well, what did you like about those conversations? What did you like about the process of working with people? And then you get to the really isolated thing. Well, I really enjoyed talking to people and figuring out like what their core concern was or what their need was, and being able to connect them with a program, a resource, a service that would be able to meet that need. Bingo. So like, it's small, like having conversations, learning about what people need and making connections, but it's that process of kind of drilling down with people, because if you keep it so high level to helping people, well, now we're talking about, it could be, like half of the organizations out there maybe help people in different ways, more than half, but it's being really specific. So I asked them to make that distinction, think even about like 5 or 6 times in your career, and the clues to what we want to do next oftentimes lie in the past as well, but getting them to describe what they were doing and why they were fired up by it. But then I asked them the flip as well. Think about times where you could do something well. Maybe people even come to you to do that particular thing, but it felt like an obligation. You were tired. Maybe you procrastinated doing it. Well, what were you doing? Why did you feel that way? Like, being able to make that distinction is really important, because those clues are going to feed what career path that person will explore next. So it's through conversation. It's not a questionnaire or anything like that. I mean, I do offer a reflection assessment for clients. And that is one of the first questions on the assessment. But oftentimes people need a little bit of help to get to a place that it's going to be really useful information for their job search.
In your response just now, Michelle, it reminded me of an official assessment that's out there that's similar, that it was introduced by another colleague of mine, and she's a Spark assessment facilitator. And so what it does that exactly. It opens up, the questions show what functions make you more energized, what excites you
Yeah.
about the function. And at the end of it, it doesn't direct you into a specific role. It doesn't say any of that. It's just saying, okay, here are your high points, your mid or your low. This is what energizes you, not so
Yeah.
much in the low. So I love that breakdown of what you said too, and going back from the volunteer stuff, right? How do you pick and
Yes.
choose and pull from every area? And can that be an opportunity that you can, put together for yourself?
Exactly. Well, and some people in their volunteer work, I mean, do all kinds of amazing things. Like if you've been on a board, for example, I mean, that's
Mhm.
leadership at work. If you have led an event for a not-for-profit, or you've done some fundraising, or maybe you've worked in the office and you've, answered phones, you've put together, mailing packages, or like any of those kind of things, you can look to those things as well, and there's lots of clues that will feed what your next step is. It could be something really small and maybe something you hadn't really thought of, but when somebody's encouraged to think back to those times, then all of a sudden you see the light bulbs go off. Oh yeah, I remember when I was leading this event, like I loved bringing people together. I loved working with volunteers. I loved being able to communicate with like the manager to say what was going on, and update them accordingly. Like there's so many things that we've done over our lives that it's just isolating those things that we've just wanted to do more of. One of the questions I ask my clients is, what are the things that cause you to lose track of time? That
Mm.
you just get into flow. You're just in it and you just keep going. And then on the flip, what are the things that you procrastinate doing? Oftentimes there's reasons why we procrastinate, and it has nothing to do with time management, but there's a resistance there that can be explored. And
Yep.
oftentimes we can connect that to different functions that we've been involved in over the years.
That's that's true. That is so true. This is a great segue to the other point you made. Is saying you said taking stock in your non-negotiable. So as you're
Yeah.
reflecting on
Hmm.
what energizes you on the other half of the sheet, the bottom part, next page, you have to outline those non-negotiables. What are
Yeah.
some frameworks you use, maybe that are outlined in the book, or when you're talking with folks about this portion of it?
Yeah, I mean, I find this comes down to, one more basic question, which is what are the things that are so deeply important to you at this stage in your career that would cause you to walk away from an opportunity that might be a really good one? And so, when people start to reflect on it in those terms, all sorts of things come out. For some it's salary, right? It's compensation. I need to have a minimum of X, or a total compensation package that includes these things. More often these days, and I would say this started with the pandemic 5 years ago, but it becomes really prevalent now still, is location is a non-negotiable. So I am working with a number
Mm.
of clients who really just want remote work, or want the ability to choose, a few days in the office, or, also some time at home. I have some clients who are walking away from opportunities that are requiring them to be in the office like 5 days a week or 4 days a week, especially if the location of that office is quite far from their home.
Mm.
So, like, flexibility in location is a big one. Also, flexibility in hours, that's a non negotiable. So, if it's a very rigid schedule, like a 9 to 5, or, like a defined start, a defined end with no flexibility in there, some clients are seeking out other opportunities that do offer that flexibility because of, family commitments or things like that. When I'm talking to clients about their non-negotiables, I ask them to think about what are their priorities today. So, what was important to you, what was deeply important to you 20 years ago, doesn't really bear a lot of relevance today unless those things still are in play. So, using myself as an example, when I was in my 20s, I was very happy to do a lot of traveling for work. I traveled like coast to coast, from the West to the East in Canada, lived out of a suitcase. I was delivering training. I loved it. I didn't have kids. I wasn't married. I was on my own, and I was really interested in climbing that ladder, getting the next promotion. I was happy to do those things. But I mean, fast forward to today, I've got boys, they're 18 and 16. I have no interest in doing all of that travel. And because my priority is I want to be at home, I want to be at home for them. And so, it's really looking at what's most important to you today, knowing that those things will change. So whatever your non-negotiables are today, fast forward, 2, 5, 10 years down the road, chances are those non-negotiables are going to look different. And so this requires, some soul searching and really, looking at what's deeply important, but especially what would cause you to walk away from a great opportunity. That usually brings those non-negotiables to light a little bit more.
So for the folks that are currently working, and if you have clients that you work, I'm sure you do, that are in that space, and they bring up, like they're saying, Michelle, I'm just burnt out.
Yeah.
This, right? It used to be a 9 to 5. Now it's a 9 to whenever, because the workload has 3x, 4x, and the expectation of now of corporate is saying, got to get the work done. It is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I have worked with clients who have gotten to that point where they are burnt out. And, oftentimes the first thing that they think of is, well, I need to change jobs. Like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I need to leave. And I'll get them just to kind of hit the pause button on that before they make big decisions. And I'll ask them, what conversation have you had with your leader? Because some of these things can be not necessarily resolved, but they can be addressed by having a conversation with a leader to let the leader know, like, that this is my workload now, and these are the hours I have to do it, and this is how I'm feeling about my work right now. Like, having an open conversation about maybe making some changes in your current role. And there's a lot of supportive leaders who, knowing how a person is approaching their work and how it's impacting them, will work with them to make those changes. And for some people, now they feel like they can stay, like that they're not at that burnout point because they've had that conversation. Other clients of mine have had that conversation. They have had leaders who have nodded their heads. Oh yeah, we're going to change, we'll look after it. And nothing changes. And so then they do have to make a big decision, So, if I'm going to stay, I'm accepting the way things are. And there's a lot of other work that can be done with putting boundaries around our work. I mean, that's a whole other coaching conversation about how to establish and hold boundaries so that you can make sure that you're not overworked. But, the solution isn't always to jump ship and to look elsewhere, because you may just be leaping into something else that is quite similar to what you're leaving.
I mean, I hear that a lot, and everything you said, I wish it can be on replay for folks. Like, hey, there are some methods that you can use.
Yeah.
It's definitely what I hear a lot too. And so that's amazing. So let's dive into the book. What are some tactics that you have outlined in there? And I didn't get a chance to get a copy, so I'm definitely going to get a copy. I think if you have some at home, I need a signed copy from you.
Yes, I can do that. Absolutely.
About cultivating career growth. So growth can mean different things. How are you defining career growth in your book?
Yeah, I mean, career growth is really, it starts with doing the reflection on, like the work that energizes you, the profile of that, organization that you want to be with, and those non-negotiables, and really starting to explore, well, where do I go from here? What are some paths that will align very well with those keys of career fulfillment? So for some individuals, the growth is it's entering a new role where they're going to be building new skills. They're going to be doing some new things. I call them resume building opportunities. In our career, we want to have resume building opportunities that showcases that we've taken on some new responsibility, we've challenged ourselves, and we've developed some new skills. For other people, the growth is simply, maybe it's doing the same work, but it's broadening your horizons in terms of where you're doing it. So for some, it's just finding a new home, really. And that's going to give them, access to obviously new individuals, new mandates, some new responsibilities. For some, exponential growth can happen if you decide to, do something that maybe has been waiting backstage in your life for a while. So I work with some individuals who have always thought about owning their own business and, just never did that. And then they lose their job and they have a bit of financial security to give them a buffer. But then they decide, you know what, this is the universe speaking to me now, that maybe I need to start my own practice. I need to offer something new. And so that growth can happen on multiple levels. The common denominator, regardless of, what you do next and what you're exploring and the skills that you're developing or the companies that you're part of, the one common denominator is starting with knowing what those keys to fulfillment look like for you. And, like what looks like for me is going to look different for you, Orlando, is going to look different for colleagues of yours or friends of mine. It's getting really in touch with what is important to you at this stage in your career, and then aligning your new direction, whatever that is, to honor those things that are important to you. And I mean, no path or no job or no organization is perfect, but where there's intersection along those three pillars, so that you're mostly doing work that energizes you, that you mostly feel like this is an organization that is a good fit for me for different reasons, and that those non-negotiables are being honored. When there's an intersection between those three, then chances are it's going to keep you doing what you're doing for a while. If there's an imbalance with any one of those three, it will cause you to look for something new. And for some people, that is where the growth is. They actually enter a new path and they realize, whoa, that's actually not for me, for a whole host of reasons. And it leads them to something new. That's growth as well. Sometimes having an experience that maybe was uncomfortable or maybe not as positive can lead to something that is really fruitful and that, keeps you quite energized for years to come.
That piece there too, and how can that? And I'm trying to frame this question correctly, because considering the current climate, right? For the folks that are listening or catch the replay, I hear a lot of people saying, "Okay, the how to," right? Because the market is the market and what it is,
Yeah.
and it's almost there. And I mentioned this earlier. They're looking at folks, coaches, etc., for the one answer fix,
Yeah.
when it's like there's never going to be one out there for you.
No.
And so how can we help them condense that timeline as much as we can, right? Because they can't control the offer coming through, but they can
Yeah.
control how they show up, right?
Yeah.
And how they
Exactly.
package themselves. And so what would you say as far as a timeline to go through the assessment? And these are folks that are both working or not working right now, and where they should start to, if they really want to focus and try to get some hyper results, take this amount of time, and that varies based on who they are. And then here's where they need to start implementing and double down.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's so many things, of course, right, that we can talk about that will be helpful to people. And I think, I'll start with, I'm going to reference the sign that's behind me in my office. And it's probably small for everybody who's watching, but it says, "Find joy in the journey." And to your point, Orlando, as much as people are looking for, like the surefire way to find work, like the quick solution, like give me that magic bullet. It's not a magic bullet. Like, it is a process. It is a journey. And there's some hacks in that journey too. So I would say, like, for for listeners who are needing to find something quickly and you really need to get in there and you want to make sure that you're not just casting out resumes like all over the place. One start certainly is to focus in on what you're comfortable with and what you know. If you need to find something really fast, you may not have time for exploration. You may not have time to think about or even entertain new career paths. So start with what you know, and especially make sure that first of all, you have a resume that really completely tells your career story, that you have results and achievements that showcase not just what you did, but how you did it. And I call it the so what factor, which is really the results and outcomes. And you're going to want to take that enhanced and strengthened resume, and you're going to want to start building out a plan. So a job search plan, I mentioned it earlier, but it's so important. I'm going to mention it again. It includes not just looking online, but talking to recruiters and doing a fair amount of networking, a lot of reaching out. So first of all, line up your job boards, knowing it's only 20% of your work effort to find work. Do make sure that you are canvassing, setting up your job alerts so that you get pushed out the new notifications for jobs that line up to your skills and experience. You're going to want to customize your resume. And I mean, the quick fix, not quick fix, but a hack, I guess, is you can use ChatGPT as a way of customizing your application. Now, I always say, do not let ChatGPT write your resume because it's not going to reflect you. But if you are really stuck, it is a good starting point. So even just crafting your resume and then feeding the job posting in your resume into ChatGPT or any AI, and ask the AI, identify specific areas that I need to strengthen in my application in order to meet the requirements and the responsibilities of the job posting and to get me an interview. And what chat will do is it will isolate all the things that you need to do. So that's a good way to quickly identify changes that you need to make. But then you're going to want to get on the radar of recruiters. So, some are agency recruiters that advertise their positions online. Check out their positions, register and set up an account, upload your resume, but then take to LinkedIn and network with people, connect with recruiters, comment on the posts that they are making and get on their radar as a way of exploring some other options. But then, you can brainstorm the different companies that you want to reach out to. What are some of the organizations that maybe you've heard are hiring? They're good places to work. Even if you're not seeing a job posting for them, take to LinkedIn and your network and identify ways that you can get a warm lead to a conversation. That way you're maxing out on all of your job search activities. I too often find clients that when they're in active job search mode, they will only look online. And I tell them, you are missing out on probably 80% of the opportunities because that's only one way to look for work. So for somebody who wants to look for work fast, make sure that you're including those three elements of a strategy. That's going to be your plan. When you have a plan, you can set goals for yourself and you can action the plan, and especially reach out to your network. Sometimes when there's a job loss, I mean, again, I've lost my job twice. There can be a lot of shame that goes with that, a lot of discomfort, fear of failure, so many things that we can talk about. But, it's not a time to hide either. If you think of people in your network, if you found out that they lost their job, you would want to help them. Well, people will want to help you too. So, reach out and talk about it. Talk about what happened, talk about what you're looking for, because sometimes even through conversation, you can find out about jobs that are available in other places that maybe you'll not see online. So, so I recognize I unpacked a lot there, that has to do with the job search plan, but these are all very actionable things that people can do to make sure that they're looking and that they're securing opportunities that would be good fits for them.
Yeah, I love what you said too. A couple of things. One is commenting on recruiter posts, right, to get visible. and recognize there. And then the other definitely is talking through what you're looking for within your network. One of
Yeah.
those key things missed is, hey, I'm looking for sales marketing, to be in the sales marketing space. Okay,
Yeah.
well, I need details. I need more substance to that. So if I do find something in my, in the company I work for, or friends or so, I can speak more highly of you. I think the candidates
Yeah.
sometimes miss the transfer of information to say, hey, I'm just looking for X, but what breadth of X do you mean? Is that, to Wafa's earlier point, is that a coordinator role? Is that a content manager? Is that what specifically? Give them as much detail as you can in your network so they
Yeah.
can, they can be clear when they come across something, and when they're bringing stuff to you, it has more substance to it versus you're like, ooh, no, that's not it. And they're like, well, that's all you
Totally.
told me. You only told me this, right?
Well, and these opportunities too come up in the strangest places. Like, I mean, one of the most amazing stories I remember, it was from a networking workshop that I was delivering to newcomers to Canada to help them network. And these are individuals who don't have a big network, but giving them those strategies to reach out and find work. And, there was one candidate in the program that I was supporting that, she had a son, and she was bringing her son to a street hockey game with a friend of his. And she went and dropped off her son, and the dad of the other boy was out on the street as well. And so, she just started talking to him. They had met for the first time, and he said, "Oh, what are you doing professionally?" And she said, "Oh, I'm looking for work." "Oh, well, what are you looking for?" he asked. And so she was looking to get into tech. And well, the person she was talking to, she didn't know it, but he was the CIO, like the chief information officer for one of the biggest tech firms in Ottawa. And he
Look at that.
said, "You know what? Like, we're always looking for people. Like, why don't you give me your resume?" And so she did. And then, HR reached out and booked an interview, and she had one interview and two interviews, and she got the job. How did this come up? Because she
Wow.
happened to mention she was looking for work on the street talking to her son's friend's dad. And so these opportunities can come up in the most random of places. And that's why I encourage people to not hide when you're looking for work. Do talk about it. I mean, some people will be very public, and they will post on LinkedIn. I mean, I'm sure you've seen, Orlando, like a number of posts, or people
Yep.
say, "Yeah, I'm looking for work. This is what I'm looking for." Not everybody is as comfortable with that, but so you can take it still to a conversational level. And, even if you're not comfortable reaching out to people yet, especially people you don't know, start with people that you do know, and just educate your network on what it is that you're looking for. I mean, we can be friends with people and not really have a good grasp on what their skills are and what they do. So use this as an opportunity to educate your network. And if you are making a big pivot into something new, you're going to re-educate your network, because, maybe you were known as somebody who was a salesperson, but now you're getting into project management, for
Yep.
example. Like, it's educating your network on the new path that you're following. And a lot of very well-meaning people will say, "Oh, like, I'll keep an eye out for you. Like, send me your resume." Well, take it one step further and say, "Oh, would I be able to get a conversation with the person that you're sending my resume to?" That way you own the relationship, and you're not just kind of passively waiting for people to do stuff for you.
That's good. That's really good. So we have one last question before we land the plane. She asked, Philomena asks, how can you use Chat GPT to do a strong cover letter?
Hoo-hoo. Excellent question. So I'm going to reiterate what I shared earlier, which is,
Mhm.
you do not want ChatGPT to write the whole cover letter for you. Because one of the things that I've been hearing, and Orlando, you've probably been seeing this on LinkedIn as well, is that recruiters and hiring managers alike can spot a resume and a cover letter, certainly a
Mhm.
cover letter that's been generated by ChatGPT. So what I recommend to people is use chat as a starting point. It's your inspiration. So if you feed your resume and the job posting into chat, you can ask it to generate a cover letter that would be a really good fit for the job. But do not stop there. So this is where you're going to want to put your own spin on it. You want it to sound like you. Your cover letter is part of your brand, and your brand represents what's important to you and how you come across to others, what you value. So when somebody reads your cover letter and then they meet you, the two should really align. If you let ChatGPT just write the whole thing, well, it's going to sound like ChatGPT. It's not going to sound like you. So I go back to the 3 key questions that you're going to want your cover letter to answer. So you're going to want a clear explanation, like in a statement, what motivated you to apply for this job? That's personal to you. ChatGPT can't make that up. So you do want to make sure that that's in there. Why do you want to work for that organization? Again, that's going to be your research. Go online, learn about the organization, like Google them, check them out in the news. What are they known for? Like, what is it about the company that aligns for you? That's personal for you. Chat can't write that either. And then, chat can be of assistance with articulating some really core job requirements and how you meet those requirements. But again, you don't want it to put the whole thing together for you. So start as give it a running start. You get a running start from using chat, but then go back and personalize it and make it your own.
There you go. There you go. Run with that information. Thanks, Kimberly.
Yes.
She says, really appreciate being able to join this session. So much good advice. Thank you for joining. So before we land the plane, Michelle, first, let me thank you again for connecting, making it a seamless connection, and getting on the podcast here with the slight pivot. Folks, we were supposed to go yesterday, but a little bit under the weather, but we still made it happen due to this amazing professional and warm-hearted individual. We had a great conversation, so I know for a fact she'll be back. I'm committing her to coming back on the podcast for part 2 for sure.
I would love that.
Awesome. So share with the folks where they can connect with you, consume your content, and get some coaching.
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is a fountain of information. It's mschafercoaching.ca, and you can get a few things there. So certainly you can get a free chapter to my book, Cultivating Career Growth, Navigating Transitions with Purpose. So if you'd like to check out a free chapter, that's something that I'm giving away to all of you through my website. You can also buy my book. There's a direct link to buy to Amazon. So you can actually access and purchase the book for yourself. My book is part workbook as well as information and strategy. So it's a great way to make your notes and, craft your own job search strategy. Also on my website, you can find information about my programs. You can even book a complimentary 30-minute chat with me. So if you're listening and maybe you are struggling in your job search and you just want to be able to talk through what your job search plan is and get some ideas, there's a way to book directly to my calendar for a 30-minute complimentary spot. And I'm on LinkedIn as well. So I really encourage you to reach out, follow me. I'm on LinkedIn posting about job search and career exploration topics. I would say probably 5 out of every 7 days of the week. So there's always new things in there. I believe strongly in giving, a lot of advice too. So you'll always get something actionable from one of my posts. And, even if you listen today and, you want to share something that really resonated with you, please reach out, message me directly. My email as well is michelle@mschafercoaching.ca. So lots of ways that people can get a hold of me, Orlando.
Love it. Final question I always ask my guests is, what makes you get up and do what you do every day?
You know what? I would say hands down, it's the reward of taking somebody and working with them from a stuck place in their job search or a stuck place in terms of figuring out what their next steps are going to be. And maybe even not even just stuck, frustrating, discouraged, overwhelmed, all of those things, and working with them and seeing them through to them, finding those positions and with that organization that does believe what they believe in, and being able to see them transition into energizing work. I love that. That's really what fuels me. That's what keeps me doing what I'm doing. And back to the fact that I've been restructured, I have a lot of appreciation for what that experience is like. So being able to support somebody on that journey and really help them with a plan and some actionable strategies, that's something that keeps me going.
Love it. So we did get a final question. We're going to sneak it in. It's from
Yes.
Wafa again. She asks,
Yeah.
what advice would you give to job seekers who have to compromise on their non-negotiables due to the
Mm.
difficult circumstances? Yep.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it's really an honor of all of the job seekers that, might not necessarily have a choice, that they have to accept the first thing that comes to
Mhm.
across their path because they do have bills to pay. And I would offer this, Wafa, it's this is not your forever place. And what I mean by that is maybe you need to accept that job today in order to kind of move through this really challenging time. But know that you're not stuck here, that you can accept a job because you need to at this time. And then commit to yourself that you're going to look for something else that is more aligned to those keys to career fulfillment. So, for some people, that transition is multi-layered. They need to take something that's not ideal. Maybe they don't even really enjoy it, but they have to take it. But then it's the commitment to look for something else. So know that, this is not where you're going to be forever. Things will change for you, and acknowledging that can give some motivation.
There you have it. So remember, if you have more questions and comments, share them in the notes. If you're dropping comments now, tag Michelle so she can respond to those as well. And if anything's missed, I'll make sure I tag her so you can get your questions answered. But make sure to connect with her on LinkedIn. Book your 30 minutes. This way you're hearing directly from her, and it's a customized response just for you. But Michelle, thank you so much again.
Thank
Thank you for
you.
everyone who's joining. Make sure to catch the replay, share all the information, grab her book, and we will see you next time on the Career Talks podcast.
Bye.